Hey, wake up! It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs, here to kick ass and report the news. And I don't see any asses anywhere. And we begin at the White House, which put forward a timeline for when the president will make a decision on bombing Iran. 2 weeks. Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on Thursday.
Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
Now, hopefully, this is a result of the pressure the president is feeling to not start a war. And he's giving himself and the Iranians off-ramps to strike a deal over the next few weeks and avoid a major escalation. However, just as likely, this is a bluff, and strikes could be imminent. The Iranians have already said they won't negotiate with the U.S. under duress while bombs are falling. So that doesn't raise much hope that a deal could be struck in the next couple weeks. An Iranian delegation, though, is meeting with Europeans today to discuss a diplomatic agreement. But Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have already used the media and subterfuge to disguise the timing of Israeli strikes on Iran, and Trump could very well be doing the same thing here, attempting to regain the element of surprise after news reports circulated for days that he was on the verge of bombing Iran. Another explanation for the purported 2-week delay: it gives the Pentagon more time to establish assets like aircraft carrier strike groups in the region in order to deter any potential Iranian retaliation to a U.S. attack. Israel and Iran have been lobbing missiles back and forth at each other for more than a week now since Israel started this war. Exactly how much longer the Israelis can sustain the war effort without more direct U.S. intervention, it's not entirely clear. According to reporting from the Wall Street Journal, Israel is already starting to run low on defensive missile interceptors. Quote, "Israel is running low on defensive Arrow interceptors, raising concern about the country's ability to counter long-range ballistic missiles from Iran if the conflict isn't resolved soon. The U.S. has been aware of the capacity problems for months, and Washington has been augmenting Israel's defenses with systems on the ground, at sea, and in the air. Since the conflict escalated in June, the Pentagon has sent more missile defense assets into the region, and now there is concern about the U.S. burning through interceptors as well. Plus, the U.S. military just spent over $1 billion and exhausted deep stockpiles of missile defense armaments during its short war against Yemen earlier this year. Any attack against Iran would be a war of choice, started illegally without an authorization from Congress. And just like the Iraq war disaster, it would be a conflict predicated on a lie about weapons of mass destruction. The White House continues to claim Iran was on the verge of building a nuclear bomb, despite intel agencies saying that's not the case. This is from the New York Times. Quote, "U.S. intelligence agencies continue to believe that Iran has yet to decide whether to make a nuclear bomb. That assessment has not changed since the intelligence agencies last addressed the question of Iran's intentions in March." That was back when Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard assessed Iran was actually not building a nuke, that a nuclear weapons program had not been authorized by the Ayatollah. Trump has since told reporters he doesn't care what Gabbard said before. All of this assumes, of course, that the main goal of the war on Iran is about stopping a nuclear program, when it's really about regime change. All right, heading to Los Angeles now, where the Dodgers baseball team sent ICE agents packing on Thursday. Deportation officers were seen congregating near the gates of Dodger Stadium, preparing for a potential immigration raid. That triggered alarm around the community, and protesters immediately descended on the stadium to pressure ICE to leave. Here's what the baseball team said in a statement about the ordeal. Quote, "This morning, ICE agents came to Dodger Stadium and requested permission to access the parking lots. They were denied entry to the grounds by the organization. Tonight's game will be played as scheduled." The immigration agency tried to save face and claimed the Dodgers' statement was false and that they were never at the stadium. That's an absurd lie, courtesy of the agency's lying spokesperson, Tricia McLaughlin. DHS agents were at the stadium gates. There's video of it. Here's NBC's Jacob Subaroff reporting on it at the time.
It's Dodger Stadium, and behind me, those are federal agents that appear to have been staging here after what have been a series of immigration enforcement actions in Los Angeles this morning. So now you've got protesters, media. Here at Dodger Stadium, outside the parking lot, while federal agents are there, seemingly blocked in for now.
Now, later, the Department of Homeland Security issued another statement claiming, quote, "This had nothing to do with the Dodgers. Customs and Border Protection vehicles were in the stadium parking lot very briefly, unrelated to any operation or enforcement." Okay, so they were there now. These liars can never get their story straight. ICE is ramping up raids and detentions, terrorizing communities to satisfy the President of the United States. So any resistance to that, whether it be from the Los Angeles Dodgers or local community members, it's welcome news. And finally, Elon Musk. He blew up another rocket this week. Late Wednesday night, SpaceX prepped its massive Starship rocket for a static fire test in which the engines are briefly ignited while the vessel is locked to the ground. But more than the engines ignited, the entire dang rocket blew up.
The day when they, whoa!
What? That's
No!
Yep, that's a massive fireball engulfing SpaceX's starbase in southern Texas. Musk responded to the fiery mishap on Twitter, posting, quote, "Just a scratch." The billionaire is trying to make light of another failure, but he should be panicking. This is the fourth time just this year that a Starship has exploded during a test, marking yet another setback for the program. This is the rocket that Musk claims will eventually carry humans to Mars. It won't. It's also supposed to be the vehicle that helps humans return to the moon in a few years. Starship is an integral part of the Artemis lunar missions, which have been delayed repeatedly due to failures at both NASA and SpaceX. President Trump's budget proposal calls for canceling NASA's Space Launch System, which is the rocket that is scheduled to return to the moon once its initial 3 missions are complete. SLS, as it's known for short, has not exploded even once during a test flight. The program is being canned in order for NASA to free up funding to give to companies like SpaceX to take the lead on future missions into the cosmos. This is from Ars Technica. Quote, "What would come next if the SLS rocket and Orion spacecraft are canceled? The most likely answer is that NASA turns to an old but successful playbook, COTS. This stands for Commercial Orbital Transportation System. Under the COTS model, NASA provides funding and guidance to private companies to develop their own spacecraft, rockets, and services, and then buys those at a market rate." Suppose that raises the question then, what exactly is the market rate for repeated pyrotechnic shows over Texas and the Caribbean. How much should we keep paying the world's richest man to blow up rockets in our skies? All right, comrades, let's get right to it. I have weekend plans I have to attend to, so I don't actually. I'm not allowed to leave the desk, but I know you have plans, so I won't keep you much longer. Let's do it. This week's Rich Dicks are New York City's wealthy elite. The ruling class in the Big Apple is sweating the mayor's race. Rising in the polls and with a real shot to win the dang thing is socialist Zoran Mamdani, and he's promised to tax the rich in order to make living in the city more affordable for the broad working class, with programs like free bus transit, free childcare, and a rent freeze. And wealthy capitalists are melting down. They were provided a safe space this week in the pages of the Free Press. That's the intellectual dork web publication started by Barry Weiss. The city's rich are threatening to take their toys and move to Florida if Zoran wins. And let me say, as someone from Florida, good luck with that, guys. Enjoy the wet bulb conditions and increasingly devastating hurricanes. First, it was grocery store magnate John Katzimatidis, owner of the Gristetti's supermarket chain, who told the Free Press he'd consider shutting down his stores if Zoran wins. Quote, "We may consider closing our supermarkets and selling the business. We have other businesses. Thank God we have other businesses." So this guy has enough businesses where he'd be willing to just shut one down altogether, lay off all his workers, just because he's mad at whoever was elected mayor. Katzimatidis, who, by the way, is a longtime ally of the Clinton family, is especially upset with Zoran's plan for municipal grocery stores that will offer residents essentials at fair prices, which he doesn't think he'll be able to compete with. Katzimatidis called Florida the, quote, promised land. Yeah, promise to not be able to get your mansion insured anymore. Billionaire hedge fund manager Bill Ackman also complained to the Free Press and promised capital flight if Zoran prevails. Quote, "If Mamdani becomes the mayor of New York, you're going to see the flight of businesses from New York. Most of the businesses that operate in New York City in the financial sector are incredibly portable." Oh no, not the bankers leaving. That will be devastating for the city. I mean, all that crushed up Vyvanse won't snort itself, right? Ackman, too, talked about going to Florida, where he said the wealthy are, quote, welcomed as opposed to viewed as the enemy. Maybe these arguments work on other people, but to me, it just sounds like entitled brats complaining that they aren't getting enough respect. The chorus of wealthy whiners also included Warby Parker co-founder Neil Blumenthal, who is a Cuomo supporter. He tried to distort reality by claiming Zoran's policies would price his own workers out of the city. Buddy, that's already happening. Blumenthal claimed, quote, "I love New York. I will never move from New York. But there's a lot of other people that will and are leaving New York. Then there are others that will never even become New Yorkers because the cost of living is just too high." Yeah, that's precisely why policies aimed at reducing the cost of things like transportation, daycare, and rent are good. Blumenthal probably doesn't realize this because he has so much money he doesn't even notice price increases. But in New York City, rent has increased by over 8% in recent years, while wages have only grown by 1.5%. And that is precisely why Zoran's campaign is resonating with the city's working class. And besides, most of the jerks complaining to the Free Press have already mostly relocated to Florida. They're already taking advantage of a tax loophole that allows them to claim Florida residency and not pay income taxes as long as they live in the Sunshine State for at least 183 days a year. This is a well-known practice. And in that interview with the Free Press, Katsamatidis admitted it, saying if Zoran wins, quote, I would spend far less than 183 days a year here. That's for sure. Well, pal, don't threaten us with a good time. Think of the entitlement from these pricks. They have more money than they'll ever be able to spend in their lifetimes, their kids' lifetimes, their kids' kids' lifetimes. And while the working class of New York City gets crushed by the rising cost of living, these oligarchs fill their diapers over the idea of paying an additional 2% tax on their annual incomes over $1 million. Just a 2% tax. I'm not sure if they're more upset about the tax or the fact that their workers can actually have a bit of dignity living in the city. Either way, it's some extreme rich dick behavior. All right, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise all the way from India. It was sent in by Diva in Nainital. And I'm told there's a fuzzy friend in it. Enjoy. Thank you, Diva. That's the show. Thank you for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have a YouTube and podcast channel, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day, capitalism will fall. Until then, we're going to be right here. See you next week.